Hi, today we're going to be going over how to make an adjustment to your parking brake on your 2005 Nissan Frontier. Now the models can extend all the way from 2005 up to about 2013, and you should be okay using this instructional video. Now to get started, first thing is let's talk about safety. Now you're going to want to chalk up the front wheels in order to make sure the vehicle isn't moving forwards or backwards while you're trying to make that adjustment on the rear wheels. Now, that brings us to the next step, which is lifting up the rear axle. Now, the parking brake really only actuates the brakes on the rear axle, and the specific brakes it actuates is the rotor, or I'm sorry, the drum brakes, not the disc brakes. So you're going to have to raise up the rear axle. Now, lifting up the rear axle, you're going to use a jack up underneath the rear differential, and that'll raise it up far enough till you can get some jack stands up underneath the actual rear axle, underneath each side. Now after you complete that, you're going to go ahead and remove the tires. Now before you actually remove the tires, make sure that while it's down on the ground, make sure you break those lug nuts. But once it's up, go ahead and remove those lug nuts and pull off the wheels. Now after you have the wheels off, you're going to go ahead and take the time to inspect the actual brake pads on the calipers. Now those are actually for your disc brakes. That's not actually what we're talking or tracking about in this video, but go ahead and take that time to inspect your rear disc brakes. Once complete that, go ahead and you're going to remove the caliper assembly and the actual rotor. Now the caliper assembly is basically attached onto the rear rotors basically by two bolts which are on the inside of the caliper assembly, and you're going to go ahead and torque those off. It's about a 14mm bolt, and you're going to tear those down with basically a 1/2-inch socket drive, or you can go ahead and use a cheater bar, pop them off real quick. Now after you completed that, go ahead and take the time to loosen up the park brake adjustment nut, which is located in the center console up underneath the cup holders. Now you can basically pry up the cup holders just with your hands, and it'll expose it real simply, and you can make minor adjustments to that parking brake with that simple nut right there. Now, step number 7 is adjusting the drum brakes and the star wheel. Now, once the wheels are off with the actual rear axle and the calipers and rotors are off, you'll expose the actual star nut adjustment wheel, which is on the drum brakes behind the rotor assembly. So you can basically adjust that with a flick to the left or to the right with a flathead screwdriver, or if you have strong skin, your finger, your thumb, or your index finger. So go ahead and make those adjustments. Now you're basically going to be doing any adjustments to loosen that screw up, lefty-loosey, in order to open up those drum brakes so they'll be engaging the rotor as they open. So just keep that in mind when you're making the adjustments. Once you've completed the adjustments on the rotor on one side, make sure you go ahead and hop over to the other side. And once all that's completed, you put the rotors back on, you tighten up the nuts or a lug nut on one or two sides of the rotor, and you go ahead and make the final adjustments to the actual parking brake adjustment nut underneath the center console. You're going to make that, you're going to tighten it up all the way. It should be about halfway through the adjustment capability of that bolt nut combo, and you should be good to go. And if you have any questions, go ahead and post them down below. Let's get started.
Okay, next we're going to go ahead and remove the caliper off of the axle here. And so basically we're going to use a 3/4 inch socket with a breaker bar. That should be able to get her off of here. So it's a pretty tight bolt on here. Should be able to break it out no problem. There we go. So we get the bottom one, and then get the top one. I recommend wearing some gloves just in case you encounter some resistance so you don't bang up your knuckles. That's pretty easy here. Alright, we're going to go ahead and remove these bolts and then take off the caliper and the rotor. In order to access the parking brake adjustment nut, basically you're going to have to remove this section of your cup holder center console. And really this little piece right here just pops straight out of it. And what you can do is, you can see it's kind of joined with the seam right here, and it follows up also on the back side. And you can just push in that seam and pull out. And so basically with two hands, I just lift straight up on the cup holders and it comes on out just like that. And to show you exactly where the nut is inside of there, it's pretty simple, as there is a nut basically right there, and that's what creates the main adjustment on the actual parking brake lever. Alright, from this position right here, basically I'm going to be using a socket 10mm piece to line over that. Now, I don't have a deep socket, so basically what I'm going to have to do is just kind of catch the edge of it with another extension tool, and basically just with the parking brake partially engaged up at this point, I can reach it here through some of the space and then place this in here and get some actual turning on it. I'm just using a simple kind of torque tool just to get the action on there and loosen this bolt up. So once again, I'm going to go ahead and loosen this up to about halfway, and that way I can get the calipers and rotors off, and then also start to make some adjustments later on. Okay, this right here is the actual star piece that you're actually going to be adjusting on the drum brakes, and if you turn it lefty-loosey, then that's going to expand it right here, basically releasing the drum brakes in order to engage more surface area on the actual rotor. So I mean, if you tighten it, it's going to loosen it up, and you're not going to engage the rotor at all. So what you're going to want to do is do 1 or 2 clicks, and that should be able to get you where you want to go. Now, a problem I'm having is that the actual rotor itself has this little bead on it. After a while, the material has ground down on the rotor itself, so that there's created this lip. And so basically I'm having to tighten this all the way and then put the rotor on, and then I'm gonna basically remove it just a little bit to expose it, to expose the star on the outside, and then I'm going to flick it a couple times loose, or lefty-loosey, with the actual like a flathead screwdriver, so that way I can actually get this surface on here getting to the right spot. Alright, so what do I mean by, maybe when you start out this, maybe you shouldn't remove the entire rotor assembly. Maybe you should just pull it out just a little bit, and then you're basically going to take this right here and you're going to be flicking it to the left to loosen it up. So basically you're going to put your flathead on there and push it a little bit to the left. 1 or 2 clicks. And that should get you in the range where you want to be. Otherwise, if you try and take it off and then put it back on, you're going to have a lot of difficulties, and you're going to have to loosen up all the way, then put it on, and then start tightening it down. So that's one of the things, or one of the troubleshooting things I've been able to work with and do. Okay, so after I've made the adjustments on this side and the other side, I went ahead and attached on just one of the actual lug nuts on there, and now I'm going to go ahead and tighten back up the adjustment nut on the actual parking brake lever inside the cabin in the center console. Okay, now that I'm back inside the cab, I'm going to go ahead and make adjustments to the actual nut right here for the parking brake. I'm just going to be tightening this back up almost past where it was, and that way I can get it nice and tight, and hopefully I'll get to a point where it's tight enough to where it'll only take me about 6 clicks, to get a good firm parking brake. Okay, so I went ahead and tightened up the parking brake adjustment nut right here, and it seemed to have done a pretty good job. Now, before when I wanted to gauge the parking brake, I almost had to bring the parking brake to a perpendicular position from the center console. Now I bring it up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and it's kind of a nice tight feel, and it doesn't feel too tight or too loose. I can gauge a couple more clicks and it's really tight, and I have no problem bringing it back down. So overall, pretty successful.